The Velishen High Council chamber resonated with harmonious laughter, their crystalline voices creating a symphony of derision that would have been beautiful if not for its cruelty. Ambassador Kenthvar gestured dismissively at the holographic display showing Earth's pathetic defense fleet, a collection of primitive metal vessels that looked like children's toys compared to the magnificent bioships of the Velishen hegemony. "Look at them," Kenthvar's voice chimed like breaking glass. "They still use dead matter for their ships. No living tissue, no neural networks, no organic adaptation. They are barely more advanced than the creatures that crawl in their planet's mud." Fleet Commander Zilneth allowed her amusement to ripple through the council chamber's psychic field. 27 cycles ago, when they first achieved faster-than-light travel, I predicted they would be extinct within a generation. Instead, they've somehow managed to spread to 43 star systems like a plague. The youngest council member, Velrian, pulsed with confusion. But surely their expansion must have some merit. The reports from our scouts suggest they've been unusually effective against the Mordaki raiders. The chamber fell silent. Then, like a storm breaking, the laughter returned threefold. "The Mordaki?" Kenthvar's derision turned sharp. "Those scavengers? Even our larvae could defeat them. The humans simply happened upon some weakened raider packs, nothing more." Admiral Kixtel had been quiet until now, her ancient bio-ship interface scars still weeping nutrient fluid. "There is something else," she said, her voice cutting through the mockery. "Intelligence reports speak of a new human vessel. They call it the Blackship. Our deep space monitors detected it 3 rotations ago, but it vanished before we could properly scan it." "Vanished?" Velrian's interest sharpened. "How does a primitive human vessel simply stealth technology?" Zilneth interrupted. "Crude but effective against unsophisticated sensors. The humans are parasites, but parasites can be cunning." Kenthvar's bioluminescent skin flared with impatience. "Enough. The decision is made. The human expansion ends now. Their little empire will serve as a warning to other upstart species who forget their place in the natural order." The vote was unanimous. Within a stellar cycle, the Velishen would mobilize their 3rd fleet, 47 bioships, each one, a living weapon capable of consuming entire planets. The humans would learn in their final moments what it meant to challenge a truly advanced civilization. As the council dispersed, Admiral Kixtel remained behind, her ancient eyes fixed on the holographic display. The human vessels looked so crude, so fragile, yet something about them bothered her. In her centuries of service, she had learned to trust her instincts. The Black Ship had vanished too cleanly, too perfectly. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Captain Rixen Vaskari watched the Velishen fleet formations through her command display. Her human heritage had been scrubbed from all official records, but her genetic legacy remained. The gift that allowed her to think like the enemy while commanding the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. The Nemesis hung in the cosmic void, its experimental metamaterial hull absorbing every photon that touched it. The ship was invisible to conventional sensors, a ghost among the stars. But more than that, it was something the Velishen couldn't comprehend, a fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology built in the shadows while the galaxy laughed at humanity's primitive fleets. Soon, the laughter would end. 3 days after the Velishen Council's decision, the 3rd Fleet began its stately advance toward human space. Bioships moved with an organic grace that defied conventional physics, their living hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that served as both communication and psychological warfare. Each vessel was a work of art, cultivated over decades to be both beautiful and terrifying. Fleet Commander Zilneth stood within the bridge womb of her flagship, the Tidal Harvest, feeling the ship's neural network pulse with anticipation. The vessel's consciousness was ancient, its memories stretching back through 17 previous commanders. She could feel its hunger for battle, its desire to taste human fear. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carried through the ship's nervous system. 38 hours to the Kepler 442 system," responded her tactical coordinator, Nexreth. "Long-range sensors detect 17 human vessels in defensive formation around their primary colony world. They know we're coming." Zilneth allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had detected the fleet despite their stealth precautions. Good. She wanted them to know death was approaching. Fear would make their eventual surrender sweeter. In the Nemesis, Captain Vascari watched the Velician advance with calculating eyes. Her ship hung in the shadow of an asteroid field, completely invisible to the bioship's organic sensors. The enemy fleet was magnificent in its alien beauty, and utterly unprepared for what was coming. "Weapon status?" she asked her second-in-command, Commander Jacquin Korvac. "All systems nominal. The quantum torpedoes are fully charged, and the phase cannons are ready for rapid deployment." Korvac's voice carried the tension of someone who had been waiting for this moment for years. "Captain, the Velician have no idea what they're sailing into." Vascari nodded, her fingers dancing across the neural interface that connected her directly to the ship's quantum AI. The Nemesis was humanity's greatest secret, a vessel that incorporated technology from a dozen different species, refined through human engineering and powered by controlled singularities. It was fast, deadly, and completely outside the Velicians' understanding of human capabilities. "Signal the defense fleet," she ordered. "Tell Admiral Krexnith to begin the retreat pattern. We want the Velician to think they're winning." The human defense fleet began its withdrawal from Kepler 442, their ships moving with apparent panic as the bioships approached. The maneuver looked like a rout, but every movement was calculated. The humans were drawing the Velician into a trap that had been years in the making. On the tidal harvest, Zilneth felt the ship's consciousness surge with predatory satisfaction. The humans were fleeing just as predicted. Their courage had evaporated the moment they faced a real threat. "Commander," Nexreth reported, "the human fleet is in full retreat. Our advanced scouts report they're abandoning their defensive positions." "As expected," Zilneth's voice carried the weight of inevitability. "These creatures know only how to run when faced with true power. Continue the advance. We'll destroy their fleeing ships, then consume their colony world." The Velician fleet surged forward, bioships spreading into attack formation. Their living hulls pulsed with anticipation, weapon organs extending like flowering predators. The hunt was beginning, but in the dark between the stars, the Nemesis began to move. Its quantum drives ignited silently, propelling the invisible ship toward an intercept course with devastating precision. Captain Vascari felt the ship's AI merge with her consciousness, their thoughts becoming one as they prepared to show the galaxy what humanity could truly accomplish. The Velician had laughed at human primitiveness. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that lets you believe you're the hunter. The Kepler 442 system erupted into chaos as the Velician Third Fleet engaged the retreating human forces. Bioships moved like living nightmares through space, their organic weapon systems unfurling like deadly flowers. Plasma streams and biocorrosive gases filled the void, turning the battlefield into a hellscape of alien beauty. Admiral Krexnith watched from the bridge of the human flagship, defiant resonance as 3 of his escort vessels were torn apart by Velician living torpedoes, organisms that burrowed through hull plating before detonating their acidic cores. The creatures were playing with them, savoring the hunt. "Sir, we've lost the Meridian Lance and Stellar Forge," reported his tactical officer, her voice tight with controlled panic. "The enemy is herding us toward the asteroid field." "Maintain course," Krexnith commanded, his weathered face betraying none of his inner turmoil. Everything depends on timing now. Aboard the tidal harvest, Zilnith watched the human fleet disintegrate with satisfaction. Their ships were admirably tough for primitive technology, but ultimately no match for Velitian bioengineering. Each human vessel destroyed was a lesson to the galaxy about the futility of challenging natural order. Fleet Commander, Nexreth announced. The remaining human vessels are attempting to reach the asteroid field. Should we intercept? Let them run, Zilnith replied, her voice rich with contempt. Cornered prey fights more desperately. We'll destroy them at our leisure once they're trapped. The bioships surged forward, their living hulls pulsing with anticipation. The hunt was nearly over. In the shadows of the asteroid field, the nemesis hung like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Captain Vascari watched the tactical display with cold precision, her neural interface allowing her to process information at superhuman speeds. The Velitian fleet was exactly where she needed them to be. Captain, Commander Korvac whispered, all systems are green. The enemy fleet is within optimal engagement range. Vascari nodded, feeling the ship's quantum AI pulse with anticipation. The Nemesis was more than a vessel. It was a fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology, powered by controlled singularities and armed with weapons that violated several known laws of physics. The Velitian were about to learn why humanity had been chosen to wield such power. Target the flagship, she ordered. Full quantum torpedo spread. Let's announce ourselves properly. The Nemesis decloaked in a blaze of impossible light. Its metamaterial hull shifting from perfect invisibility to mirror-bright reflection. The ship was beautiful in its alien geometry, a fusion of human angular design and fluid alien curves that hurt to look at directly. On the tidal harvest, emergency klaxons began shrieking as sensors detected the impossible. A human vessel had appeared from nowhere, its energy signature unlike anything in their databases. Fleet Commander! Nexreth's voice cracked with shock. Unknown vessel decloaking off our starboard bow. Energy readings are impossible. Zilnith stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human ship was wrong on every level. Its energy output exceeded what their primitive technology should allow. Its quantum signature was partially phased out of normal space-time, and its weapons were charging with power levels that should have torn the vessel apart. That's not possible, she whispered. The Nemesis fired. Quantum torpedoes tore through space-time itself, their exotic matter warheads ignoring conventional defenses. The tidal harvest staggered as the first torpedo struck its biohull, the living tissue, screaming as it was converted into pure energy. The ship's consciousness reeled in agony as impossible forces tore through its nervous system. Damage report! Zilnith shouted, her composure finally cracking. 70% of our biohull is gone! Nexreth's voice was barely controlled panic. The weapon! It's converting our living tissue into energy. Our regeneration systems can't compensate. Across the fleet, bioships began dying as the Nemesis unleashed its full arsenal. Phase cannons tore holes in space-time, quantum disruptors scrambled the bioship's neural networks, and exotic matter torpedoes converted living tissue into raw energy. The magnificent Velitian fleet was being systematically dismantled by a single human vessel. For the first time in millennia, the Velitian were afraid. The Nemesis moved through the Velitian fleet like death incarnate, its impossible weapons, systems systematically dismantling ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. Bioships that had never known defeat were reduced to drifting organic debris, their living hulls screaming in frequencies that drove lesser species mad. Fleet Commander Zilnith watched in horror as her magnificent third fleet was torn apart by weapons that shouldn't exist. The human vessel moved with a grace that defied its angular design, its quantum drives allowing it to phase partially out of normal space-time. Velitian bioweapons passed harmlessly through its hull, while its return fire converted living tissue into pure energy. "How is this possible?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the tidal harvest's death screams. "Their technology is primitive. We've monitored their development for decades." Nexreth, her tactical coordinator, was barely functional. Blood wept from her bio-interface ports as the ship's dying consciousness flooded her neural pathways with pain. Fleet Commander. The weapon signatures. They're not entirely human. There are elements from the Kethmori Collective, the Void Singers, even traces of progenitor technology. Impossible, Zilneth breathed. The Kethmori were extinct. For millennia, the Void Singers vanished into dark space, and the progenitors, she trailed off, the implications too terrible to voice. Aboard the Nemesis, Captain Vascari watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Velishan fleet was breaking apart, their formations dissolving as panic spread through their neural networks. Bioships began fleeing in all directions, their predatory confidence shattered by an enemy they couldn't understand. "Captain," Commander Korvac reported, "we're receiving surrender transmissions from 17 vessels. They're requesting terms." "Ignore them," Vascari replied, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of human suffering. "They wouldn't have shown mercy to human colonies. They get none from us." The Nemesis continued its deadly work, each shot precisely calculated to maximize psychological impact. Vascari wasn't just destroying ships, she was destroying the Velishans' sense of superiority, their fundamental belief in their own dominance. Every exploding bioship was a message to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer prey. In the depths of space, 3 Velishan bioships attempted to escape toward the system's edge. The Nemesis phased partially out of normal space-time, its quantum drives propelling it through dimensions that existed only in theoretical physics. It materialized directly in the fleeing ship's path, its phase cannons charging with lethal intent. "Please," Admiral Kixtel transmitted from the lead vessel, her ancient voice breaking with terror. "We surrender. We acknowledge human superiority. Just, please." Vascari's expression remained impassive. "You laughed at humanity until we showed you what we were capable of. Now you'll serve as a warning to every species that thinks genocide is acceptable." The phase cannons fired, their exotic matter beams tearing through the bioship's living hulls. The ancient vessels died screaming, their consciousness fading, as their neural networks were disrupted at the quantum level. Back on the tidal harvest, Zilneth made a desperate decision. If she couldn't defeat the human vessel, she would at least ensure the galaxy knew what had happened. She activated the ship's quantum communication array, broadcasting on every frequency used by the galactic community. "This is Fleet Commander, Zilneth of the Velishan Third Fleet," she transmitted, her voice carrying across light years of space. "We were wrong about humanity. They are not primitive. They are not weak. They have built something that defies our understanding of physics. They have become something—" She paused, the words almost too terrible to speak. "Something that makes us obsolete." The transmission ended as the Nemesis fired its final shot. The tidal harvest exploded in a cascade of bioluminescent fire, its ancient consciousness finally falling silent. In the aftermath, only the Nemesis remained intact among the drifting debris of what had once been the Velishan's most powerful fleet. The human vessel hung motionless in space, its hull gleaming like a dark mirror against the stars. Captain Vascari stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display clear of enemy contacts. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. The galaxy would learn that humanity had evolved beyond their understanding, and that the age of human persecution was ending. The message was clear. They had laughed at humanity until the Blackship roared through their fleet. Now the laughter had stopped forever. News of the Third Fleet's annihilation spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On Velishan Prime, the High Council chamber fell silent as Fleet Commander Zilneth's final transmission played on repeat. The crystalline beings who had ruled through fear for millennia now faced something they had never experienced: helplessness. Kenthvar, the ambassador who had dismissed humanity so casually, stood frozen before the holographic display showing the debris field that had once been their most powerful fleet. 47 bioships, each centuries old and irreplaceable, reduced to organic matter floating in space. "One ship," whispered Velrian, the youngest council member. "One human ship destroyed an entire fleet." Elder Morthak, the oldest living Velishen, rose from his meditation alcove. His ancient voice carried the weight of millennia. "I have lived through the rise and fall of 18 species. I have seen the birth of stars and the death of civilizations, but I have never witnessed anything like this." Across the galaxy, the news struck other species with varying degrees of shock and revelation. The Kethmori Collective, thought extinct, for 3,000 years, stirred in their hidden deep space habitats. The Void Singers, who had retreated to the spaces between galaxies, began to sing haunting melodies that spoke of humanity's unexpected ascension. Most telling of all, the progenitor archives, ancient repositories of knowledge left by the galaxy's first sentient species, began to unlock themselves, their quantum locks recognizing a new inheritor of their legacy. On Earth, in the hidden facilities beneath the Mariana Trench, Director Lysandra Vorthen watched the incoming data streams with grim satisfaction. The Nemesis had performed exactly as projected, but its success had accelerated the timeline dramatically. They had intended to reveal humanity's evolution gradually, allowing the galaxy to adjust. Instead, they had been forced to show their hand completely. "Madam Director," her aide reported, "we're receiving communication requests from over 400 species. The Galactic Trade Consortium is requesting an emergency session. The neutral zone. Peacekeepers want to establish formal diplomatic relations and—" He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The hegemony of silence has broken their 30,000-year isolation to request an audience." Vorthen nodded grimly. The hegemony of silence, the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilization, had withdrawn from galactic affairs before humanity had even evolved. Their sudden interest meant the situation was far more significant than anyone had realized. "What about the other Velishan fleets?" she asked. "They're withdrawing to their home systems. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for a siege rather than attempting retaliation. They're afraid, Madam Director. Genuinely afraid." Meanwhile, the Nemesis continued its patrol of human space, its presence alone enough to prevent any aggressive action against human colonies. Captain Veskari had become something of a legend overnight, the human who had broken the Velishan's back with a single battle. But she knew the real work was just beginning. The galaxy would not simply accept humanity's new position. Some species would ally with them out of fear or opportunism. Others would unite against them out of desperation. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, ancient powers were awakening to investigate this unexpected development. In the depths of space, monitoring stations detected something that made their operators' blood run cold. New quantum signatures were appearing throughout the galaxy. Signatures that matched the Nemesis but with subtle variations. The humans hadn't built just one impossible ship. They had built a fleet. The realization sent shockwaves through every major power in the galaxy. Humanity hadn't revealed their full hand in the battle against the Third Fleet. They had simply announced their arrival on the galactic stage. The question now was, how many more black ships were out there, invisible in the void, waiting for their moment to strike? On Velishan Prime, as the Council debated their response to humanity's sudden ascension, a new quantum signature appeared in their outer system. Then another, and another. The bioships of their home fleet began screaming in harmonics of pure terror as they detected the impossible. A dozen human vessels materializing from nowhere, their hulls gleaming like dark mirrors against the starlight. The message was clear. The age of Velishen dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. The sight of 12 black ships hanging motionless in the outer reaches of the Velishen home system sent tremors of terror through the crystalline beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Each vessel was a masterpiece of impossible engineering, hulls that seemed to absorb light itself, quantum drives that phased partially out of reality, and weapon systems that defied every known law of physics. Admiral Kexathara, commander of the Velishen home fleet, stood in the neural center of her flagship Eternal Bloom, feeling the ship's consciousness writhe with primal fear. The vessel had been grown over 7 centuries, its neural pathways shaped by the accumulated wisdom of dozens of previous commanders. Yet now, faced with humanity's black ships, it responded like a prey animal confronted by a superior predator. "They're just waiting," whispered her tactical coordinator, Vernash. "No aggressive moves, no weapon signatures. They're simply there." Kexathara nodded, her bioluminescent skin flickering with anxiety patterns. "They don't need to threaten us. Their presence alone is the threat." On the lead human vessel, Absolute Silence, Captain Mixander Corvin watched the Velishen fleet with calculating eyes. Unlike the Nemesis, which had been built for surprise attacks and psychological warfare, the Absolute Silence was designed for diplomacy, though its weapon systems were no less devastating for being secondary to its purpose. "Captain," reported Commander Nexaria Thorn, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Velishen High Council. They're requesting negotiations." Corvin allowed himself a thin smile. "Negotiations, not surrender terms. They still think they have something to bargain with." He paused, considering. "Open a channel. Let's hear what they have to say." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the crystalline forms of the Velishen High Council. Their previous arrogance had been replaced by something Corvin had never seen from their species: humility. Elder Morthak spoke first, his ancient voice carrying notes of defeat. "Captain Corvin of the human vessel, Absolute Silence, we acknowledge that we may have misjudged your species' capabilities." "Misjudged?" Corvin's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of centuries of human suffering. "You declared genocide against my people. You intended to exterminate every human in the galaxy as a warning to other species. Misjudged seems insufficient." Kenthvar, the ambassador who had dismissed humanity so casually, stepped forward. His crystalline form flickered with shame patterns. We were wrong, catastrophically wrong. But surely there is room for accommodation? The galaxy is vast enough for both our species to coexist." "Coexist?" Corvin's laugh was without humor. "You've spent the last 3 centuries enslaving or exterminating every species you encountered. The Kethmori Collective, the Void Singers, the Crystalline Merchants of Tau Ceti. The list goes on. Now you want to coexist?" The council chamber fell silent. They had no answer because there was no answer. Their history was written in the blood of countless species. "However," Corvin continued, "humanity is not the Velishen. We don't believe in genocide. We believe in justice." A new voice entered the conversation, one that made every being in the council chamber freeze with recognition. It was a harmonic that hadn't been heard in the galaxy for 30,000 years. "The children of Earth speak wisdom," came the voice of the hegemony of silence. "We have watched. We have waited. The time of judgment has come." A new ship materialized in the system. Not human, but something far older. Its crystalline form was beautiful beyond description. a fusion of matter and energy that existed partially outside normal space-time. The hegemon vessel Eternal Witness had emerged from its dimensional pocket to observe humanity's ultimatum. Corvin felt a chill of recognition. The hegemony of silence had been watching humanity's development, waiting to see what they would become. This was their test. Would humanity choose the path of conquest and domination or something else? "The terms are simple," Corvin announced, his words carrying across the star system. "The Velishen will release every enslaved species immediately. They will withdraw from all occupied systems. They will submit to a galaxy-wide tribunal to answer for their crimes against sentient life, and they will never again threaten another species with extinction." "And if we refuse?" Elder Morthak asked, though his voice already carried the weight of defeat. Corvin gestured to the tactical display, where dozens of new quantum signatures were appearing throughout Velishen space. Black ships materialized over every major world, their dark hulls reflecting the light of alien suns. "Then the galaxy will learn what happens when you threaten humanity's children," Corvin replied. "Because every species you've tormented, every civilization you've crushed, they're all humanity's children now. And we protect our own." The ultimatum hung in space like a sword over the Velishen civilization. For the first time in millennia, they were not the predators. They were the prey. 6 months after the ultimatum, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The Velishen Empire, once the most feared power in known space, had become a shadow of its former self. Their bioships hung in designated quarantine zones, their crews undergoing psychological reconditioning to break millennia of ingrained supremacist thinking. On the former Velishen capital world of crystalline sorrow, the First Galactic Tribunal convened. Representatives from over 300 species gathered to witness something unprecedented, the peaceful transition of galactic power from one species to another. Director Vorthen stood before the assembled delegates, her presence commanding, despite her relatively small human frame. Behind her, holographic displays showed the scope of humanity's hidden development. Not just the black ships, but entire hidden colonies, research stations, and manufacturing facilities that had operated in the shadows while the galaxy dismissed humanity as primitive. "For centuries," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems, "humanity has been underestimated. We were seen as young, primitive, insignificant. We allowed this perception to continue because it served our purposes. While the galaxy watched our public colonies struggle with basic technology, our hidden facilities were developing something far more significant." She gestured to the display, showing the quantum signatures of humanity's true fleet. Not 12 ships, not even 100. Over 2,000 black ships had been constructed in the hidden shipyards of deep space, each one capable of single-handedly destroying a conventional fleet. "But technological superiority was never our goal," Vorthen continued. "Our goal was justice. The Velishen are not the only species to have committed genocide. They are simply the most recent. Today, that cycle ends." Elder Morthak, the ancient Velishen leader, rose from his designated area. His crystalline form had lost its luminescence, dulled by defeat and the weight of his species' crimes. What happens to us now?" Vorthen's expression softened, slightly. "You will live. Your species will continue. But you will do so under the protection and guidance of the Galactic Protectorate, humanity's gift to the galaxy. No species will ever again face extinction at the hands of another. No civilization will be enslaved or destroyed for the crime of being different." The chamber erupted in discussion as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't claiming dominion over the galaxy. They were offering protection. The black ships would serve as guardians, ensuring that no species ever again faced the choice between submission and extinction. Captain Vascari, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, stood in the command center of the Nemesis as it patrolled the border between former Veletian space and the liberated territories. Her ship had become a symbol of hope for the galaxy's oppressed species, proof that the strong could protect the weak rather than exploit them. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, "We're receiving a transmission from the hegemony of silence." The ancient voice filled the bridge, harmonics that spoke of approval and ancient wisdom. "The children of Earth have chosen well. The test is complete. The galaxy is yours to protect." Vascari smiled, understanding finally dawning. The hegemony of silence had been testing humanity all along, waiting to see if they would use their newfound power for conquest or protection. By choosing justice over dominion, humanity had earned the right to inherit the galaxy's guardianship. In the months that followed, the transformation continued. Enslaved species were liberated and given the resources to rebuild. The Keth Mori collective emerged from hiding to reclaim their ancestral worlds. The Void Singers returned from the spaces between galaxies, their haunting melodies now carrying themes of hope rather than sorrow. The galaxy that had once laughed at humanity's primitive technology now looked to human space with respect and gratitude. The black ships had become symbols of protection, their dark hulls serving as shields against the darkness that had once threatened to consume everything. And in the deep archives of Earth, Director Vorthan sealed the records of Project Nemesis with a simple notation: "Mission accomplished. The galaxy is safe." The age of predators was over. The age of protectors had begun. As the last Veletian war criminal was sentenced to rehabilitation rather than execution, a new era dawned across the stars. They had laughed at humanity until the black ships roared through their fleets. Now, those same ships stood sentinel over a galaxy finally at peace, their dark hulls reflecting the light of 1,000,000,000,000 suns and the promise of a future where no species would ever again face extinction for the crime of being different. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had saved it, and in that salvation they had found their true purpose among the stars.